Welcome. r/malicious compliance. How my father got out of so many speeding tickets they had to change the law. My father has been a lawyer here in BC, Canada for more than 30 years. When he was starting out in his 30s he was hustling hard to support a stay-at-home wife and me, his young son. As he was very much a type of personality with not much patience, he sped on the highways, often. And he got speeding tickets, often. However, he took every single one to court and had every single one overturned. The reason was quite simple. At the time Canada was in the process of switching over from imperial miles per hour to metric kilometers per hour, and all of the road signs had to be replaced. Now the BC legal code specified that a road sign was legally comprised of two signs on a pole. See below for a better explanation of the way the signs looked. Apparently at some point someone in charge of replacing all the signs with the new metric ones decided that they could save a considerable amount of money by printing all the information on one sign. But this no longer complied with the specifics of the legal code. So he would go back to the exact sign that he was ticketed because of and take a picture of it and then bring the picture to court along with a copy of the laws in question. His defense was very simple. He would allow the arresting officer to take the stand and give his testimony regarding the issue of the ticket, and then show the officer the picture he took and ask them to identify whether that was the sign that he had sped past. They always agreed, saying that it was in fact the very same sign. He thanked them and then dismissed them with no further questions. He would then bring the picture to the judge along with the bookmarked page of the BC Highway Act and present the judge with the exact wording of the law, followed by his factual argument that, since there was only a single sign posted, it did not constitute a legal road sign as defined in the Highway Act. As I said before, every single ticket was dismissed and all my dad lost was a half an hour of his time. This worked for almost a decade, with him overturning literally thousands of dollars of speeding tickets, until the law was changed. He still speeds BTW. TL. Doctor, bureaucrat cuts costs on road signs, but they no longer fit the legal definition, so my dad sped like a fucking madman for years with zero consequences. Edit. An explanation from a friendly redditor, as my telling of this story was from a recollection of several years ago. I'm old enough to remember when Ontario put the new signs up. At that time, they were a white sign with black lettering that said maximum up top, the speed in, obviously, giant font below that, and then, on a separate piece of metal below that, same width as the above sign, but 1/4 the height, with black background and white text, km/h. Maybe that's where the two signs part comes from. Over the years, the two signs were merged to become one piece of metal, and appeared to be two because a sign shop drew outlines around both parts of it as it had been when it was two. From. I got a friend who works as a traffic investigator for a county. That's literally the subject of his job. Is the sign lawful? Things like, is it the proper distance from the last sign? If it's a speed change, does it give proper warning? If it's a stoplight, is it visible for a certain distance approaching the intersection? He said if I ever got a ticket, to ask as part of a discovery motion, to have the road investigated. He said there's almost always something wrong with the signs versus what's required. I got a parking ticket because I left my car in a spot where the rules were covered by two different signs. It was a little confusing, but if I had paid closer attention I would not have screwed up. Anyway, I was skeptical that the configuration of the signs was legal. I'm a lawyer and knew how to do the step-by-step research, ending with the National Standards Guide for Road Signs, which was designated as official by other laws. Turned out that the sign configuration in question was expressly allowed. There was even a photograph of it. Oh well. Edit. I was really just hoping for a fun day in parking ticket court, where I could discuss the issue with one of my county's overqualified judges pro tem. I was mad a few years ago because I got nabbed at spot that I think was designed as a speed trap. Basically it was a divided highway with a 70 miles per hour limit, and they dropped the speed limit to 35 out of nowhere. I'm not a lawyer, but I deal with federal code a lot for work, so I dug into the state rules about setting speed limits, and found out they couldn't do that unless they did a traffic study on that section of road. I triumphantly went down to the city hall and requested the traffic study, which they produced. I still think they fucked with it. It basically said that normal traffic flow there was 35, which I find preposterous. But I figured I wouldn't have much a chance arguing that. I got a ticket once for failure to stop at a stop sign. The officer was parked a ways down the street perpendicular to the stop sign. I went to court to fight the ticket, but didn't have to produce the evidence that the officer could not see the sign from where they were parked. I had pictures and aerial shots of the area proving this fact. When I got to court, the officer claimed not to remember the case, and so I was dismissed. I'm sure someone else did the same homework that I did, showing the officer couldn't see the spot well enough to determine failure to stop. So the officer bailed so as not to be embarrassed again. We had a small town decide they wanted to make more money on tickets. They did this by changing the speed limit from 50 to 35. They did so without getting the change approved, just came in and put a sign there. They also had the speed reduction warning sign separation from the actual speed change way below the required law, so that by the time you saw the first 35 sign you were nearly to the second one, nowhere near enough time to slow to 35 without slamming on the brakes. They then would place a cop at the second sign and just ticket anyone speeding past it. Finally someone fought it. Apparently it was such an egregious abuse that they ended up having to repay all the tickets they issued for it, because it was a clear case of intentionally breaking the law to make money for the town. My dad got out of a speeding ticket once because between the intersection he used to turn onto the street and the next intersection there was no speed limit sign. There was one further up the street past his intersection, but it could be and was easily argued he'd have no way to know what that sign said, having not driven past it that day. Cops love to post up there for tickets, because for that mile or so the road dipped into a downhill before turning back uphill. Easy to catch someone who might not be paying close attention to their speed. They had a sign up within the week. My dad likes to say it's his sign. I once got a parking ticket for parking in a no parking zone. Problem was I was parked on the other side of the street in a legal parking area. This was 30 plus years ago. No simple popping out my camera phone and snapping a quick photo. I had to go all the way back to my apartment and grab my camera and take photos of the sign where I was parked. Clear view of the street, that there were not any no parking signs on the side of the street I parked. A bunch of different angles to make it all perfectly clear I was legally parked. Then, I had to take the film to the drugstore and have the photos developed. Then, I had to fill out the paperwork that I was contesting the ticket, go to the courthouse on the date printed on the ticket, and get a trial date, trial in quotes, because I don't know what else to call it but a date where the judge would hear my argument. It was all a huge hassle over a $30 fine. But, it was the principle of the thing. So, I got my court date and totally spaced it. Just plain forgot to go. $30 fine, plus probably another $30 in fees and penalties for not showing. I don't remember. I was very pissed at myself and the whole situation. I'm old enough to remember when Ontario put the new signs up. At that time, they were a white sign with black lettering that said maximum up top, the speed in, obviously, giant font below that, and then, on a separate piece of metal below that, same width as the above sign, but 1/4 the height, with black background and white text, km/h. Maybe that's where the two signs part comes from. Over the years, the two signs were merged to become one piece of metal, and appeared to be two because a sign shop drew outlines around both parts of it as it had been when it was two. Here in Alberta right now a large number of them are just the maximum and the speed. I once got a ticket for speeding in the village next to mine called Wolfenhausen. On the ticket it said I was going 65 in a 50 area in Wolfenhausen. Wrote them back that there had to be some mistake, that I have never in my life been to Wolfenhausen and actually never have even heard of a place of that name. Thus it was impossible that I had sped through that place and there was probably some mix up with the license plate or something. Never heard of them again. Many years back I was in traffic school and the cop giving the class told us his story. He did traffic enforcement and was sitting under a speed limit sign with his radar gun. The sign said 35 miles per hour. He'd given 6 tickets so far and everyone kept saying the speed limit was 45. He was in the process of writing up ticket number 7 when a city truck rolls up, takes the 35 miles per hour sign down, and puts up a 45 miles per hour sign. He tells the person he pulled over they could leave and proceeds to the chief's office, drops the 6 tickets on his desk, and tells him that he has to fix all 6 tickets because they are invalid. Turns out the speed limit on that road had been changed, but nobody bothered to tell the police. Reminds me of a similar story. Friend of a friend used to get out of tickets all the time. This was before radar guns were ubiquitous, so I doubt it would work much now. What used to happen is the cop would see you speeding by from his speed trap, fall in behind you, and verify your speed based on what his speedometer read. Anyway, dude was a mathematician, so he put his skills to good use. He'd bring one of those easels with the paper sheets on it with to do the math on so everyone could see, but he's only break it out after questioning the cop. Basically what he would do is ask them at what point they first identified him as speeding, and establish a starting point, ask them how long they followed him for, and where he was pulled over. The case is months after it happened, so the cop doesn't remember exact details. How long did I follow him? Oh, 96 maybe. Oh really, and we only traveled 1 mile in that period. Breaks out easel, does math. That's only 40 miles per hour, officer, and that's a 55 miles per hour zone. Dismissed every time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.